Welcome to episode 5 of Police News TV for the 4th week of February 2012. I'm your host, Paul Balmer. On this week's broadcast, South Carolina man shoots up 2 towns and police cars with an assault rifle. Phoenix PD pulls ballistic vest because of failure. Cop killers have their day in court. Drug-running pilot gets caught in a presidential no-fly zone. These and more police news stories and our very popular Dumb Criminals segment. You're in the right place with us here on Police News TV, your TV news source for national law enforcement news by cops for cops. Our co-host Jill Adrian is on vacation this week. Don't know where she went exactly, but she's been tasked to get me a souvenir, and we'll see just what she brings back. Now for this week's top stories. Police buy cemetery plots in a most unusual story, Seattle, Washington. Many of you may remember the lengthy murder investigation of Susan Powell in '09 and the crazy twists and turns in the case. Her husband, Josh Powell, was a suspect in the murder investigation and lost custody of his 2 young boys. During a state-supervised visitation, he attacked his sons with a hatchet and blew the house up in a gas-fueled blaze, killing himself and the 2 boys on February 5th. The 2 Powell children were buried on February 11th at the Woodbine Cemetery. Then the family of Josh Powell picked a grave plot for his body in the same cemetery overlooking the boys' graves. Understandably, this angered the parents of Susan Powell, who were the court-appointed guardians of the deceased Powell boys. Pierce County Sheriff Paul Pastor and Detective Ed Schroyer, who head the anti-crime organization Crime Stoppers of Tacoma Pierce County, responded by buying the 2 plots on either side of the boys to make sure Josh Powell didn't wind up there. The cost is being paid by Crime Stoppers, other organizations, private donations. As Detective Schroyer stated, "We might not be able to keep Josh Powell out of the cemetery, but this is better than having him right next to the boys." Lost job may have led to shooting spree. The Pickens County Sheriff's Office in South Carolina is investigating a shooting that damaged 2 cruisers and peppered a home with bullets, while Greenville County deputies investigate another shooting that may have been committed by the same suspect, Jason Lee Chance, 38. Pickens County deputies responded to a shots fired call on the night of February 14th at the home of Jason Short, who said the suspect came into his home and said, "You are all dead," and fired a semi-automatic SKS rifle into the floor. He left when Short told him to leave, but not before telling the homeowner that he had just shot up a house in Greenville. Earlier that evening, Greenville County deputies responded to a shots fired call at the home of a former co-worker of Chance, whom Chance blamed for getting him fired. Chance was fired from a roofing company in December for drinking on the job. Later, as officers approached Chance's house, he opened fire, spraying cruisers with 7 bullets and the house across the street with 12, according to Michael Pulley, the homeowner. Chance has been charged in Pickens County with 2 counts of attempted murder, 3 counts of ag assault, and 2 counts of discharging a firearm into a dwelling. If convicted, he could face up to 100 years in prison. He's not been charged in the Greenville County shootings. Officer following leads in Circle K shooting credited with arrest, Phoenix, Arizona. On February 5th, a Circle K convenience store clerk was robbed by 2 armed suspects. A struggle ensued and a gun went off. Both suspects fled the scene. Phoenix PD officer Christopher Burt spent days showing numerous area residents the surveillance footage of the unknown suspects in an attempt to identify them. The officer's footwork and tenacity paid off. He eventually received a tip, located the suspects, and arrested them. In fact, one of the suspects still had what they believed to be the holdup gun still on him. Good job, Officer Burtz. That's some good old-fashioned investigative work. Obama administration plans to shut down federal immigration enforcement program. Washington, D.C. Immigrations and Customs Enforcement officials have trained local officers around the country to act as their agency's immigration officers. Working either in jails or in the field, the officers can check the immigration status of suspects and place immigration holds on them. The program, known as 287G, reached its peak under President George W. Bush when 60 local agencies signed contracts with ICE to implement it. But that trend slowed significantly under President Obama, where only 8 agencies have signed up since he took office, and none have done so since August 2010. Now, in the proposed Department of Homeland Security budget for next year, they want to end the program. They say it will save about $17 million. Goodbye, ICE. Speaking of ICE, a heroic ICE agent praised for swift actions. Long Beach, California. On February 16th, federal ICE Special Agent Ezekiel Garcia, 45, started shooting while being counseled on his performance by Kevin Kozak, the deputy special agent in charge of the LA area. Kozak was shot 6 times with bullets hitting his upper torso, legs, and hands, and he's listed in stable condition in the hospital. Reportedly, the meeting between Kozak and Garcia grew heated. Kozak denied a request by Garcia for a transfer. Then Garcia shot Kozak, who had 30 years with the same agency. Hearing the gunfire, ICE Special Agent Perry Wu, who was nearby, entered the supervisor's office and then eliminated the active threat by shooting and killing Garcia. ICE Special Agent in charge Claude Arnold for the ICE Homeland Security investigation in LA said that the injured supervisor Kozak is still alive because of Wu's quick actions. Parole officer shoots knife-wielding parolee. This story was submitted by one of our viewers named Michelle. And by the way, we want to welcome all of our viewers to submit stories and provide feedback. Duarte, California. A plainclothes state of California parole officer was working at 2 p.m. on February 17th when a perp came up behind him brandishing a knife, demanded that the parole officer hand over his cell phone. The officer identified himself and then shot the suspect in the chest. The parole officer was uninjured, and the suspect is being treated at a local hospital and is listed in stable condition. The irony is that the suspect is Samuel Castro, age 20, who was an ex-con who did time in Corcoran State Prison for a prior assault with a deadly weapon conviction. Castro's parole had been suspended a few days before the incident when he did not report to his parole agent. Supreme Court says rights don't have to be read to prisoners. Washington, D.C. The U.S. Supreme Court said February 21st in a 6-3 vote that law enforcement officers do not have to read Miranda rights to inmates during jailhouse interrogations about crimes unrelated to their current incarceration. Justice Samuel Alito wrote in the court's majority opinion, imprisonment alone is not enough to create a custodial situation within the meaning of Miranda. In the case brought before the court, an inmate was in jail for disorderly conduct. Jailers took the inmate out of his cell and brought him to a jail conference room where sheriff deputies wanted to speak with the inmate on an unrelated crime for which he was not in jail. In fact, the deputies told the inmate several times in the interview that he was free to stop the interview at any time and return to his cell. The inmate stayed and then confessed to a sexual assault during the interview. Miranda not needed. Custom armor vest fails police testing. Phoenix PD held a news conference February 17th to announce that they will be pulling all ballistic vests that their officers currently use. This stems from a November 26, 2011 incident where Officer Tony Daly was shot in the chest with a .40 caliber round and his ballistic vest failed, causing the officer serious injury. The Phoenix Law Enforcement Association, PLEA, submitted the custom armor model QVA TAC-3 ATAC-1 vest to Oregon Ballistic Laboratories for testing following the shooting, and it failed the NIJ Level 3A requirements, which it was advertised as having. Custom armor, which was once located in Peoria, Arizona, was absorbed into Diamondback Tactical, which is based in Spindale, North Carolina. A Diamondback Tactical spokeswoman couldn't be reached for comment. Instead of issuing vests to its officers, the Phoenix PD provides $800 allowance every 5 years. Officers who turn in custom armor vests will be given another $800 to buy a new vest as part of this story. Deputy Sheriff saves unresponsive baby, Washington Terrace, Utah. On February 16th, a Weber County Sheriff's Deputy, Tyler Greenhall, saved a baby's life. He responded to the mother's 911 call and arrived on the scene within a minute. The deputy found that the 2-week-old baby was not breathing. He immediately began CPR. As the ambulance finally arrived on the scene a while later, Deputy Greenhall had already revived the baby. Outstanding job, Deputy. Off-duty officer helps track down robbery suspects. San Jose, California. Michael Nasser, a 12-year veteran of New Orleans PD and recently laid off from his job at San Jose PD, stopped by his local bank February 14th. When he entered the parking lot of the bank, he saw 3 hooded men run in and knew it was going to be a robbery. Nasser said, "I didn't have a badge, I didn't have a gun. Realistically, the only thing I could do was be a good witness. It was probably the best thing I could have done." He's right. The 3 men exited the bank. Nasser called 911 as he followed the 3 bank robbers leaving the area. A short time later, the 3 suspects were arrested in their getaway vehicle. Police found money, guns, ski masks in the vehicle, linking the men to the robberies. The best part of this story is that Michael Nasser was taken back to work as a police officer at San Jose PD later that week. A good cop and good karma. Wounded detective back home, New York, New York. Another hero, 18-year veteran NYPD officer, was released from the hospital this week with dozens of fellow officers there cheering his exit. Detective Kevin Herlihy was on duty in plain clothes as an NYPD team of detectives was tailing a shooting suspect. As the suspect ducked into a Harlem subway station, Detective Herlihy followed. Then the suspect began shooting at the detective in a close combat situation. Several rounds were exchanged and the detective was wounded, but the suspect was dead. Detective Herlihy was treated for a gunshot wound to the left bicep. It was the second time in 2 weeks that an NYPD officer survived a gunshot wound. Cop shoots, kills man who endangered baby. Scottsdale, Arizona. On February 14th, Scottsdale police responded to a call about a 50-year-old male, later identified as John Loxus, brandishing a loaded gun at 2 people and threatening to kill them, all while holding his 9-month-old grandson. When police arrived, the scene became a tense standoff. Police supervisors and officers attempted to de-escalate the situation with Loxus as he stood at the front door of his house, holding the grandson in front of his body as a shield. However, he refused to comply with the officers, and they feared for the baby's safety. Scottsdale officer James Peters then was able to fire one AR-15 .223 round at Loxus when he lowered the child away from his face, killing Loxus and ending the incident. You'll be glad to know the infant was unharmed. Later investigation found that the dead suspect was not carrying a weapon, but did have a loaded .45 semi-automatic pistol several feet away, as well as a 12-gauge shotgun also loaded, and an improvised explosive device. Officer Peters, a 12-year veteran with the agency, has been involved in 7 shootings since '02. 6 of those have been fatal. The earlier shootings have been investigated by the county attorney's office and ruled justifiable. Anybody watch Justified? Man who killed officer pleads guilty. Tucson, Arizona. On February 17th, David Nick Delick, 29, pled guilty to first-degree murder. In '08, Delick began shooting at 2 neighbors' homes and later led police into a pursuit before being captured. Tucson PD officer Eric Height, 43, was shot in the head and died during the pursuit. Delick was diagnosed years before this incident with paranoid schizophrenia. He'll spend the next 91.5 years in the Arizona State Hospital. If during that time the doctors find he is no longer seriously mentally ill, he'll be transferred to the state prison to start serving a life term with the possibility of parole in 25 years, according to the plea agreement. Man convicted of killing a New Jersey cop in his cruiser. Toms River, New Jersey. Jamel Crocum, 20, once boasted that he would kill a police officer rather than be arrested and go to prison. On February 16th, a jury convicted him on murder and weapon offenses in the January 14, 2011 shooting of a Lakewood PD patrolman, Christopher Matlows. Crocum had killed another person in an unrelated incident months before, but he was yet to be identified as the suspect. Officer Matlows, while on routine patrol in his cruiser, had pulled up near Crocum in a housing project and called him over to his cruiser to speak to him. Witnesses testified that Crocum then walked over to the cruiser, pulled a gun out of his pocket, and shot the officer 3 times. He will go to trial on the other previously mentioned murders sometime next year. Killer of Maryland trooper convicted of first-degree murder, Forestville, Maryland. In June 2010, off-duty Maryland State Trooper Wesley Brown was shot and killed while moonlighting at an Applebee's restaurant. Trooper First Class Brown and another security officer had escorted Cyril Cornelius Williams, 29, out of the restaurant for being disorderly. Later that night, Williams returned to the location and shot Trooper Brown. This week, a jury returned guilty verdicts on charges of first-degree murder, carrying a handgun, using a handgun to commit a violent crime, and possession of a firearm by a felon. Williams will be sentenced this May, and the state prosecutor will ask for a sentence of life without parole. In our major drug bust segment, one of the largest PCP busts ever, Culver City, California. On February 17th, the LA Intra-Agency Metro Police Apprehension Crime Task Force, try saying that 5 times real fast, did several raids on locations in the area in what they describe as one of the largest PCP busts in years. Cops seized more than 100 gallons of PCP, nearly $400,000 in cash, and 2 semi-automatic rifles. The street value of the PCP was estimated at $1.5 million. 2 people were arrested, and it's believed that the narcotics operation was run by a gang called the Bounty Hunter Bloods, who had planned to ship the drugs to Texas, New York, and Washington, D.C. Coast Guard seizes 2 tons of cocaine, 940 pounds of pot, Miami, Florida. The U.S. Coast Guard seized 2 tons of cocaine and 940 pounds of marijuana last December after intercepting 2 different speedboats in the Caribbean Sea bound for the U.S. The cocaine street value at $48 million was seized from a boat near Honduras. The seized marijuana was worth about $850,000, and that was seized from a boat southwest of Jamaica. A total of 4 suspects were arrested and are now in custody at the U.S. Navy base in Gitmo, Cuba. In our Dumb Criminals segment, a naked man steals socks from a Walmart in Pennsylvania, Exton, PA. A southeastern Pennsylvania man is behind bars and hopefully clothed after police say he walked naked into a Walmart and stole a pair of socks. Vernon Lamont Taylor, 32, was arrested on the evening of February 15th after police say he stripped off his clothes in the parking lot of the store and went inside. Police say surveillance footage shows the 6'4", 300-pound Downingtown man walking around the store. Authorities say they used a stun gun to subdue him after he refused to comply with officers' orders. Taylor was arraigned on charges including aggravated assault and indecent exposure. He's being held on $50,000 bail at Chester County Prison. Ouch, my eye still hurts from watching that surveillance video. F-16s intercept drug plane in Obama's no-fly zone, LAX Airport, Los Angeles, California. Next time you want to smuggle drugs into the U.S., you may want to make sure you don't fly into a presidential event no-fly zone to attract attention to your plane. On February 16th, a no-fly zone was set up over an area of L.A. because President Obama had an event in the area. Well, some brilliant pilot accidentally flew into this no-fly zone in a single-engine plane, which then caused F-16 fighter jets to be scrambled to intercept the suspicious aircraft. I don't know about you, but I don't think there's anything more intimidating than being pulled over by F-16s. The military jets confronted the private plane and then escorted it to a local airport to land. Immediately upon touchdown, law enforcement officials investigated the pilot and plane. The only problem for the pilot and plane owner is that the plane was carrying about, 10 kilos of marijuana. Perhaps Obama will credit this incident as part of his war on drugs policy. Clay County, Florida, detective killed and another wounded during drug raid. Detective David White was shot and killed during a raid of a suspected drug house in Middleburg, Florida on February 16th. The home was occupied by 6 squatters who were using it as a meth lab. As Detective White and another detective approached the front door, one of the occupants immediately opened fire, striking both of them. The subject then ran through the home and tried to flee through the back door, where he encountered another deputy who fatally shot the man. The 5 other occupants of the home were taken into custody. Detective White was a military veteran who served with the Clay County Sheriff's Office for 9 years. He's survived by his wife and 2 children. He is the 18th line-of-duty death in 2012. West Virginia sergeant killed by suspected drunk driver. A deputy with the Monongalia County, West Virginia Sheriff's Department died in a crash at the end of a pursuit with a suspected drunk driver during the early morning hours of February 18th. Sergeant Michael May, 41, died in the crash just north of the Pennsylvania-West Virginia line. Pennsylvania State Police arrested Gerard A. Green, 35, of Morgantown, West Virginia, on suspicion of homicide by vehicle. For the last 10 years, Sergeant May worked for the Monongalia County, most recently on the midnight shift. He was a super deputy, said the sheriff's lieutenant, referring to the sergeant. May was probably one of the best that we had. He's the 19th line of duty death this year. Washington State Trooper found shot to death after a traffic stop. On February 23rd at about 1 a.m. on Highway 16, which is near Bremerton, about 20 miles west of Seattle, across Puget Sound, the trooper had made a traffic stop, radioed the location and license plate number. When he didn't respond to a status check, a Kitsap County Sheriff's deputy went to the scene and found the wounded trooper. He was taken to a hospital in Tacoma, where he was declared dead. The abandoned suspect vehicle was located about 2 miles down the road from the shooting scene. Please stay tuned to our Facebook and Twitter pages for more updates. He is the 20th officer killed this year. We here at Police News TV would like to thank you for watching. The Police News TV weekly news show is by cops for cops. We try very hard to bring our fellow law enforcement officers a quality, entertaining, and informative weekly broadcast. The show becomes available every Friday for you and others to watch. So why don't you spread the word about our show to other fellow officers so they can enjoy the show too. Also, you can like us on Facebook, watch and subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Please subscribe if you have not. Follow us on Twitter. We have many other ways to watch and listen to this broadcast. Go to our website, PoliceNewsTV.com, to watch the show and for internet links to stories from each of our weekly episodes. If you wish to submit a news story, you can email us at contact@PoliceNewsTV.com or call us at 727-437-2207. We do value your input. This show is dedicated to Clay County Sheriff's Detective David White, Monongalia County Sheriff's Department Sergeant Michael May, and Washington State Trooper Russ Winger. Let's keep them and their families in our thoughts and prayers. So, until next time, to all our brothers and sisters in blue out there and in other colors, stay safe. See you next Friday on Police News TV, where we've got you covered.
All right, let's roll. And hey! Let's be careful out there.